This Shabbat marks the 11th anniversary of the most controversial sermon that I've ever given. This sermon, given in the very, very early days of my rabbinate, struck a dissonant chord with nearly everyone in the sanctuary. It's not an easy feat, by the way, causing not one but many people to stand up and to speak out, even as I was delivering the sermon. Yes, I knew that it was going to stir up emotions, but even I didn't realize the full extent of the emotion tied to this particular subject. It was gefilte fish. Mm-hmm. Yes, 12 years ago, I gave a sermon not actually about gefilte fish, but a sermon where I made mention of my intense dislike for gefilte fish and my inability to even be in my home, and my mom is sitting right here and can attest to this, when my mom and my grandma and my great-grandma made our family recipe for Passover every year. But on that Shabbat, nobody could concentrate on the actual message that I was trying to deliver, and honestly, I've even forgotten what that message was at this point. But all they could think about and talk about was that the rabbi hated gefilte fish. How could this be? And my sermon was actually interrupted by people volunteering to personally carry on this family recipe on my behalf. And another stood up asking if perhaps we should organize a recipe exchange. And still another person after that said maybe, just maybe, we should have a temple-wide gefilte fish cook-off. Honestly, I've never heard of anything worse in my whole life. But after all of that, the sermons are really meant to challenge folks, so I'm going to call it a success. Now, I talk about it in jest because it was actually really funny, especially for somebody fresh out of rabbinical school. But the truth is, I actually feel really terrible that I wasn't able to be in the house where my family was cooking our gefilte fish. I hate that the smell makes me sick, because there's nothing that I love more than being part of those family traditions that serve to connect me to my tradition and to Judaism, because they're links to the past. When I make our family recipes, it almost feels like I'm standing in the kitchen with my great-grandma and her bubby as they made recipes together, recipes that served as connection points for our family to Judaism and tradition for generations. Our Torah portion this week, Va'et Hanan, I believe, is doing exactly the same thing. You see, the Israelites are approaching the Promised Land, and Moses becomes increasingly aware that the generation that lived through the horrors of slavery and the miraculous escape from Egypt and receiving Torah at Sinai was not the same generation that was going to enter into the Promised Land. This generation would not have seen firsthand God's miracles and was at risk of forgetting. You see, it'd be easy for that generation to change and to adapt to a new land with new traditions, leaving behind the burdens of the past and the yoke of slavery as they forged a new path forward. And Moses feared that they would forget their story and that they would forget God. And so he pleaded with God to allow him to cross the Jordan and enter into the Promised Land. But Moses could not go, and he could not be the one to lead them into the next chapter. So like so many of our own grandparents and great-grandparents, Moses was afraid that a new generation wouldn't have the tools to maintain their connection to the past. How could he ensure the stories of the people wouldn't be lost? How could he keep them from making the same mistakes that he and their parents and their grandparents had already done? It was by telling the stories and retelling them, by asking this generation to step into the shoes worn by past generations, by making the lessons of the past come alive for the present, the same way so many of us do and will continue to do for the next generation. Moses implores them, take the utmost care, he says. Do not forget the things that you saw with your own eyes, so that they do not fade from your mind, and make them known to your children and your children's children. Help your children to understand, Moses pleads. It will not be enough to just tell them. Help them to live it for themselves, to feel it, to see it, to internalize those moments of awe and fear and faith. Moses reminds them, you came forward and stood at the mountain, and the mountain was ablaze with flames to the very sky, dark with the densest clouds. And God spoke to you out of the fire, and you heard the words but perceived no shape, nothing but a voice. Help the next generation make those stories their own. Create the traditions, shape the stories. Help them see and understand that they too are part of this chain of tradition, and that as they carry Torah forward, that they too will have a hand in shaping it. Give the next generation the tools that they need to know so that they can know God and Torah, so that when they walk through this ever-changing world of ours with new challenges and seeming impossible choices, that they know deep in their bones that we, our people, have been here before, and that the stories of our past can and will help them to live their lives in the present. In this portion, Moses struggles with what so many of us as parents, as grandparents, as friends and neighbors struggle with. We will not be there for our children at every moment of their lives. At some point, whether it's sending them to kindergarten or off to college. Something we're all very aware of this particular time of year. We cannot guide them through every single moment, but we can give the next generation the tools they need to face whatever challenges lie ahead. We can share our stories and the ways of our people and the hard-won truths that we've learned, and then we place our faith in them and allow them the room to spread their wings and to fly. It's hard knowing that we can't protect our children every single step of the way, but our children can do hard things because we've taught them that they can. Moses showed us how, and each generation has taken up the same mantle, Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And Judaism has become all the richer for every new generation that has come after him. So teach your children the family recipes and have faith that even if they do want to leave the house when gefilte fish is being made, that they will carry your truths and your stories and the teachings of our people into the future with them. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Continue with Bayom Hahu, and on that day God's name shall be one.